Hi there everybody, welcome back to this session here. My name is Turbo Olivier and we're going to take a look at some do-while loops. This is just a quick review session, so we're going to be done with it real soon. Okay, so on the screen here you can see that we have the typical main function with just a stdi include, because we would like to print to the screen, and also have a scanf down there. So let's quickly run through the code here. So starting in the top here of the code, we have three variables. That's a counter variable, an integer counter variable initialized to 1, an input integer variable initialized to 0, and a sum integer variable initialized to 0. Three variables, three integer variables, and all of them have been initialized. Then we would like to just display counter control out on the console window, because you can implement loops in two methods, counter control and sentinel controlled. At least that's what we've taught you and demonstrated to you during the semester. So we're going to implement the do while both counter control and sentinel control. Okay, so on the output screen we'll see counter control, and then we're going to generate some output for the console window. And you can see that we're going to use a do while. So this area right here is the do while structure, and very straightforward. You type do, you have your opening and your closing brackets, and after your closing bracket we put the while with a conditional statement for the while and a semicolon. Don't forget that small little last part of it. Okay, if you get that one, you'll definitely get a syntax error going. Okay, so the do while and the while is actually very closely related. The only difference is with the do while, the loop executes first, and only at the end of the loop then the condition is checked to see if it's true or false. Whereas with a while, the condition is checked before the loop executes. So it's just a matter of order difference between the two. And the conditional statement here, same as with a while, and actually the same as with the if. So it's either a true or false conditional statement, and here we're just simply saying is counter less than or equal to 10. Now counter is the variable that we've initialized to 1 up there, and if you look at the code right there, you can see that we're incrementing it. Alright, so it's just basically this will remain true, this statement here will remain true for as long as counter is a value less than or equal to 10, maximum 10. So the moment it goes over 10, then that statement will turn false. And if this statement here is false, the loop will stop running. For as long as it's true, that loop will keep on running. So implementing counter control is simply a matter of making sure that we keep this condition true for as many times as we'd like the loop to run. So, and that's all going to be based on a counter variable, which we called counter in this case. Now, if we look at the code quickly inside the do while, it's just two lines. The first line we're printing out to the console window. We're just saying we want to display iteration with a number, and that number or that value is the value of counter. So we're displaying the counter value to the screen. And then immediately after that, we increment counter. And then we come here and we test to see is counter less than or equal to 10. So what we would like to try and do with this loop is we would like the loop to run 10 times. Alright, that's what we would like to get done with this loop, to run exactly a fixed amount of 10 times. And central to the control of this loop is this counter variable, incrementing by 1 in the loop and initialized to 1 up there, so that when it enters the loop, its initial state is 1. And then we just keep on checking to see at the end of every loop run, is it less than or equal to 10. And by doing that, this loop will run exactly 10 times. Okay, we'll see that soon enough on the output console. Let's move on to the next part. Then we print sentinel control, and we have once again another do while loop, only this time it's now implemented with sentinel control. And with sentinel control you have the loop running until it's a very specific value, and in this case the value is -1. So -1 is our sentinel value here, and we check to see is input not equals to -1, because as soon as that happens, as soon as input is -1, that means the user has given a sentinel value inside the loop. That means the loop must stop running. So this loop will not run a specific amount of time. It will keep on running until the user has provided that sentinel value. So the first thing we do in the loop is we add input to sum. Now very specifically, we've initialized sum to 0 and input to 0. So the very first time this loop runs, it will be 0 plus 0 goes back into sum, so sum is still 0. But then we print to the screen sum is equal to, that should be 0 then the first time. We ask the user to enter a value, and then the user will enter a value. And the next line we capture and store that value to our input variable, and then we check to see is it not -1. And if it's not, the loop will keep on going, so it will iterate for its second time, and then whatever value the user had now entered in the previous run will be added to sum. So sum will become whatever it currently is plus the previous input. So let's say the user had entered 5, then sum will be 5 now, and it will ask for a second value. So then the user can provide a second value, and that will keep on happening until the user gives the value -1. So we can maybe enhance the user friendliness here to say -1 to stop. Okay, so just a little bit of output to improve the user friendliness of our program. So we're telling the user that -1 will stop the loop from running, or stop asking the user for more input. And that is because we've decided to make the sentinel value -1. So the user gives -1, that will be stored to input, then it will be found that input is -1, so that will become false and the loop is done. So that -1 never got the chance to get added to sum. Alright, and that is basically it. So do while and while are basically the same, except for when does the condition get evaluated, the conditional statement. So with do while, it only gets evaluated right at the end of the loop run, and as we've seen with a while, it actually happens in the beginning before the loop run. Okay, and that was it. That's the review. Then just a real quick exercise for you guys. So I want you to use exactly what you see here on the screen, 3 variables. Like in the presentation, counter initialized to 1, input initialized to 0, and sum initialized to 0. Print counter control to the screen, and then create a counter controlled loop that will run exactly 20 times, and the counter must start at 0. So you might have to go and mess around with those values. So right here, I want you to implement a do while loop specifically. It must run 20 times, and the counter in that do while loop that controls the loop must start at 0. Alright, and then you can once again print out iteration, whatever iteration amount it is. And secondly, down here, after that loop, we want you to print out sentinel control to the screen, and then you must implement a do while loop, sentinel controlled. Okay, and the sentinel value must be -2. Okay, so in the presentation, that sentinel value was -1. So here in this exercise, I want you to make the sentinel value of -2. Make sure you tell the user about this so that your program is user friendly. Make sure you implement this with a do while. And if you implement it correctly, it will be sentinel controlled, focused on that -2 sentinel value. Then, after the loop has run, so after the user then has given the -2 signal to stop entering new values, then go ahead and calculate and display the average of all the user input values. Alright, so go and think about that one. You need to implement something extra in this do while loop so that you can go and calculate and display the average value of all the values that the user had entered into this sentinel control do while loop. Alright, thank you guys. That was it for this one.